Welcome back to MVP's What the F***?
What the f***?
What the f***?
What the f***?
Paranormal Podcast, where we talk about, well, everything the paranormal encompasses. So you ready? Let's fucking do this.
All right, what's up and welcome back, everyone. This season, we've been discussing all those creepy crawly cryptids that go bump in the night, from monsters to mythical legends. This week, we're analyzing one of the world's best known beasts, the Chupacabra.
A what?
Chupacabra.
What was that?
Chupacabra.
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 Chupacabra. He does know how to say chupacabra.
Tonight's episode is a very special one. Joining us this fine evening is Mr. Benjamin Radford. If you are in any way familiar with the topic of cryptozoology, you've probably seen his name pop up more than a time or two. Ben is the deputy editor of Skeptical Inquirer Science Magazine and is the world's most prominent expert on the Chupacabra phenomenon. He is an award-winning author of over 20 books, countless articles, and has contributed to numerous other books and research. He is also one of the very few science-based investigators of the unexplained phenomena in the world. So needless to say, if Ben is talking about cryptids and monsters, you better listen up because this man knows his shit. We can't thank him enough for taking the time out of his busy schedule to drop some knowledge on our dome pieces. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Wow, I'll take it. Thank you.
Yeah, sometimes people think that they're talking to chupacabras and it's not. They're not. It's just us.
Man, fucking speak for yourself. Shit. I'm a beautiful man.
You're
Well, Ben, thanks for coming on here with us tonight, man, and discussing all this crazy stuff with us.
Thanks for inviting me. It's good to be on.
We are anxious to learn some things that we probably don't know about this topic. To the listeners out there, if you haven't heard of the Chupacabra, it's known by many different, I guess, variations and looks. Depending on who you talk to, it looks different than other people claim it to be. But anyways, Chupacabra means goat sucker in Spanish, as far as I'm aware, right?
That's correct. Don't
Okay.
Google that, by the way. That's if you're putting together a PowerPoint, just go with Chupacabra.
Don't Google
Learn
goat
from my
sucker.
mistakes.
That's probably a good call.
Let me just delete that out of my search bar now.
So goat sucker. I mean, I'm assuming that they're referring to like its vampire-like qualities where it sucks the blood of animals or something.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. There's a whole there's a mini debate among among the very small niche of people who actually give a shit about this. Myself prominently. It's actually interesting because in the TV show Bonanza there was a reference to a chupacabra. And this has made some people think that the chupacabra actually dates back to the 60s or 50s or even earlier. But actually, if you look closely at that episode of Bonanza, it's referring to a whippoorwill bird. And according to whippoorwill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, according to legend, the whippoorwill bird sucks milk, not blood, milk out of goats, which is why it's called the goat sucker. So that's sort of one of the sometimes you'll hear someone say, oh well, the chupacabra was mentioned in Bonanza, different chupacabra, as weird as they may sound, actually different chupacabra.
Well, what is it?
Yeah, that's a good question. From what
Yeah.
I've
Yeah, that is a damn good question.
Let's start 101, Chupacabra 101.
Okay.
So the chupacabra, it's probably by this point, it's either probably the second or third best known cryptozoological monster in the world after Bigfoot. Bigfoot is, of course, the marquee, and then you probably have Nessie, the Loch Ness monster, and then chupacabra sort of jockeying for second position, and then you have sort of tertiary monsters, Jersey Devil, Mothman, Lizard Man, take your pick. And one of the things that I find interesting about the chupacabra, and one reason I spent so much time researching it and writing a book on it and things like that, is that, as was alluded to earlier, it's a vampire. Bigfoot is not a vampire. Nessie is not a vampire. Mothman's not a vampire. The chupacabra is specifically a vampire.
Like a bat with wings?
Well, so this is what's cool about it, right? So that was what really intrigued me, because I'm like, well, yeah, if it's a vampire, then it leaves dead bodies, right? That's kind of what they do. or presumably there should be some, sort of forensic evidence of these sorts of things. So the morphology of the chupacabra is I mean, we could spend half hour on that specifically, but basically the chupacabra changed form dramatically. So this is another sort of fascinating angle to it, right? If you look at Bigfoot, the Bigfoot that people conceptualize and think about is pretty much the same as it was in 1970s, 1950s, and so on.
Right.
Same thing with the other creatures, but the chupacabra is different in that if you look online or magazines, whatever else, you'll find quite a wide variety. So initially, the sort of early chupacabra was sort of a spiky-backed bipedal figure with sort of large alien wraparound eyes, spikes down the back, but otherwise, bipedal. It looked like more or less like human form. And then
this was sorry to cut you off. This was
no, that's fine.
The Puerto Rican chupacabra.
It's like a Puerto Rican in this hair. I felt Puerto Rican. Y'all know I love me some Puerto Rican. I felt Puerto Rican in this. Rican.
Exactly.
Okay,
This
so the original.
So this is the original chupacabra, and so when it sort of breaks down into different stages. So the very original chupacabra was the one that I just described. It was sighted by a woman named Madeline Tolentino in August of 1995 in Puerto Rico. This is what she described. She didn't call it the chupacabra because it was not known before that. She just said she saw this weird ass thing basically outside of her front door. And other people sort of made up the name and attached it to that figure. So that version of chupacabra basically went from 1995 to 2000. And what happened in 2000 was when all of a sudden we have the quadruped. This is where we have the chupacabras look like dogs and coyotes and mangy things like that.
So it started in the 90s?
Yep, 1995.
That don't make no sense though.
It don't make no sense unless you sort of go back to the origin of it and sort of piece together, which I did in my book Tracking Chupacabra. I was trying to figure out, okay, well, why did it appear in 1995? I mean, why not 1982 or 1975 or 1800?
Yeah.
So that was sort of one of the key parts of the mystery. I was trying to look at the dead bodies, the eyewitnesses. What did people say it was? What did people think it was? And then basically after I had looked, I interviewed medical forensics examiners talking about, like, if an animal's attacked, there's basically what I call the illusion of vampirism, where an animal can look like it's had its blood sucked out, but it actually hasn't. So there's like forensics involved. And then I was trying to circle back. Okay, well, where did this thing emerge? In August of 95. So that was sort of the fun part of sort of piecing it all together.
I have a question. So you were saying, your book, Tracking the Chupacabra, if I'm not mistaken, that took 5 years of research, right?
It did.
How do you research an urban legend when there's no evidence of its existence?
That's an excellent question. Basically, I began by assuming the premise that it was real, right? So I didn't know it was real. I'm a skeptic, obviously, but I'm like, well, if these chupacabras, and keep in mind, like Bigfoot, there can't just be one of them. I mean, there has to be a breeding population if they're actually animals.
Yes, exactly.
So I began my book by trying to. Well, I actually began my book by talking about the vampire aspect and what did people think the vampires were. So I was looking, for example, at vampire legends in the 1800s in Europe, and as Melanie knows, part of my background is in folklore. So that was basically. So I began by sort of looking at. By placing the chupacabra in the context of vampires generally. The reason I did that was because if you look at the history of vampires, typically the reason that the vampires are created, that is why people or societies think that vampires are real, is because there's something weird that they can't explain. And oh shit, who knows? It's a vampire or witches. Witchcraft is another example, right?
Yeah.
Some lightning strikes a house, or there's a stillbirth hundreds of years ago, in the pre-scientific era, they didn't know who to blame. So they blame the witch down the road. They blame a vampire. They blame some supernatural cause. And the same thing happened, I argue in my book, with the Chupacabra, where you had these unexplained animal mutilations that they didn't have an explanation for. So they're like, well, it must be that Chupacabra thing. And so that's the connection that I make.
Now, were any of these animal mutilations like actually drained of blood?
No, they weren't. And that's one of the most common misconceptions. What you find is that typically when somebody finds a animal that they think has been drained of blood, and keep in mind that in these cases these aren't professionally autopsied, right? So so what you find is that in most of the Chupacabra victim cases, there will be an animal. The animal will almost look like it's sleeping. It's not ripped up. It's not bleeding out. There's not blood everywhere. It seems to just be sitting there by itself. And if you look closely, there's 2 puncture marks on the neck. Well, of course you're going to think vampires, because that's the classic vampire.
Hell yeah, that's what I would think.
Right.
But in fact, what happened was that, it was that typically this is ordinary predation. So these are dogs and coyotes that will attack at the neck. They'll crush the neck, and then the animal will die of internal hemorrhaging.
Who started it?
Who started it? What happened was, let me tell you a story, children. So here's the thing. So just like you have to place the Chupacabra in the context of vampires, you have to place this predation in the context of the Chupacabra. So there were some ordinary predation going on in Puerto Rico, but in this case, a woman named Madeline Tolentino, who you mentioned earlier, saw something weird.
Oh my God, what is that? Oh my God, what is that?
I actually interviewed her. So she actually told 2 different versions of the story, and if you're interested, I'll parse them out later on. But basically, the main version that she told was that it was broad daylight. She didn't remember the day, but she said it was the second week, sometime the second week of August of '95, and she was living with her mother. And I went back to the house where this whole encounter happened. And she said that she was there with her mother, and she looked out the window, and it was broad daylight, early afternoon. She looked out the window and she saw this creature that she had no idea what it was. She described it as I mentioned, sort of. It had 3 fingers and toes. It stood like a human. It had big eyes. It had very distinctive spikes going down the spine. It had no nose, just 2 little slits, and then a small mouth. And she describes seeing this thing, but she doesn't freak out. She's right, which I find odd, frankly.
I'd have shit myself. I'm not even gonna lie.
I would.
I shit my pants. I don't know why I even took that chance. I shit my pants. I don't know why I ever took that chance.
Speaking of shitting yourself, she took very. You're wondering where this is going to go, right? Speaking of shitting yourself, let me tell you, folks. So Tolentino, in the interviews that she gave me, and also other ones I dug up that she gave in '96, said she gave this very elaborate, detailed description. She said that she was looking for genitalia.
What is she doing? They're not under there.
She's looking for my balls.
Hey, if anyone's seen Declan's balls, let me know. They're about this big, but a lot tinier. They're like a pea, or like a ball bearing, or like if you've ever seen a mouse ball, about half that size. Incredibly tiny. They're like really, really tiny little girl balls. If little girls had balls. So if you find little tiny girl balls that are so fucking tiny and shriveled up, let me know, because I'll put them right back up his scrotum.
Well, obviously,
hey,
that's
whatever.
the first place I'd look.
Of course.
Well, right. She's like, hey, is it a boy or a girl? I don't know. Where's the junk, right?
Look at his balls.
Right. Can you get a load of the Chupacabra's balls? So she's describing, she says it was the word she used was, it was in Spanish, but basically it was sealed. That it didn't have a butthole, didn't have a dick, didn't have a vulva. It was just basically smooth, and I don't know, whatever. I don't want to get all weird on you. So I know that ship has sailed, but so anyway, so she's talking to her mother about this creature that they're apparently both seeing, again, just outside her window, And then she says, well, she said it skipped away, but then she said it kind of flew away. And then she said it sort of hopped. So she gave slightly contradictory descriptions of how it left the area. And the very first people that interviewed her about this was a group of UFO buffs in Puerto Rico.
So this is
I mean,
a
that-
monster, and she's reaching towards alien buffs.
Well, right. So there's a strong presence of UFO believers in Puerto Rico. So what happened was they heard about this. They're like, this woman saw this weird thing. Maybe it's alien related. So they went and interviewed her, and they basically put their own spin on her sighting. So she never said it was alien. She just said that she saw this weird thing. So the group of UFO believers, including it was led by a guy named Jorge Martin. He's the head of this local UFO group. He interviews her, and he basically elicits these connections to extraterrestrials and UFOs, and that's why later on, one theory is that when aliens were visiting Puerto Rico, it was an alien pet, like a dog or dog that's like, it ran out. They couldn't get it back. So the flying saucer showed up in Puerto Rico. The aliens are looking for somebody to put something at their butts, whatever. The Chupacabra is their pet, who like ran out the door when they weren't looking and escaped into the forest.
Oh no, I got to stomp the brakes and put the idea right through the fucking windshield on that one. I'm sorry. I just can't.
You can't picture an alien dog just
No,
escaping into the forest, Puerto Rico,
no.
all
No.
smooth like a Ken doll.
Buster got away out on another damn planet. We got to track him
Exactly.
down.
Yeah, like what the fuck is this shit? I told you to put a collar on him.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they can come all the way across the universe, but they can't keep track of their pet.
Yeah, what
Really?
kind of shit is this?
So okay, so if you don't buy that theory,
No.
he said advisedly, then there's another theory, which is that no, it's not extraterrestrial. It's actually the product of top secret experiments gone wrong. Like
Now we're talking. Now we're talking.
See, there you go. This is more the group.
That's what I heard. Like they were just research monkeys on the Puerto Rican Caribbean Primate Research Center, and that they somehow bounced and escaped.
Right. So in Puerto Rico, the main place that's identified as the origin or the home of Chupacabra is called the El Yuque rainforest. The rumor is that somewhere deep in the jungle there is a top secret underground base, and this is where the Chupacabra was being experimented on until there was a hurricane. And so that's one of the stories, is that the Chupacabra is this Frankenstein engineered military monster that the hurricane came through, it blew out a window, or I don't know, did something, and this is when it escaped.
It's fucking crazy. Just some straight Island of Dr. Monroe stuff happening
Exactly.
right there.
Why do you think so many people think that it's real, though?
Well, there's a couple things here. Part of the reason that that some people believe in it is that it's you look at folklore, right? And so if you look at who believed in Chupacabra at first, this is primarily a rural thing. So this is where you have farms, you have ranchers, you have, for lack of a better word, not well-educated people, not looking down on them, but just ranchers. And so what you find is that for the ranchers and farmers, they had a reason to believe in Chupacabra because to them it was a real threat. If something is attacking your animals, if you're given an explanation, if you're given a pseudo explanation, then you're going to pay attention to this. It was, as I mentioned, often the subject of tabloids. The mainstream newspapers in San Juan weren't reporting on it because they thought it was bullshit. One way that sort of translated into the real world was that it tended to be more rural folks, in many cases less educated, who were sharing these stories about the Chupacabras. If you're a lawyer or a doctor in San Juan, you don't give a shit. The Chupacabra it's not relevant to you.
Right.
If you're a rancher in rural Puerto Rico, you need to, if you might only have, 15 head of cattle and 2 goats, and if they die, that's your livelihood. The other thing that happened was that the other reason that people believed in it was that there was local politician who was telling people that if you vote for me, I'll protect you from the Chupacabra.
Shut up.
Damn, no
Of
way.
Fucking course.
Jesus. Hey, man, the opportunity's there. Dive on it.
Right. And it sounds weird, but like using boogeymen in politics, this is standard procedure. This has happened.
It's happening right now.
In this case, he's like, again, he's playing to his base. If you
Right.
vote for me, I'll protect you from the Chupacabra. They're like, well, shit, you got my votes.
Damn.
Right.
That's some
Because
straight mob shit.
well, there's been research done that has shown that when people have high anxiety or a lot of stress about whether it's politics or like a real threat, then if they can focus onto a specific target, it will reduce their stress levels when they're thinking about their own government. So I can see how he could use this chupacabra to try and take their stress away from what's going on in politics onto this. It kind of gives them relief.
Yeah, and even if you don't believe in it, there's no harm. I mean, maybe someone made fun of him, but he got reelected. He was the mayor of Canovanas for, I think, for like 20 years or something. So
that's insane.
No, you're exactly right, and that's actually one of the reasons why Texas specifically has such a high number of chupacabra reports for a reason you just mentioned, which is that when you're looking at animals with sarcoptic mange, typically what happens is that this is actually due in part to global warming.
That's weird.
Right, exactly. Well, here's how this works: is that basically you have animals because here in the Southwest and other places as well, they're getting warmer and warmer. Animals are living longer, whereas they would have died during the cold snaps, right? So an animal has mange, and typically because it loses its fur, its insulation, they would die off more quickly because during the harsh winters. But because the winters are getting milder, more of them are surviving even with sarcoptic mange, and they're looking weirder and creepier because they're losing more and more hair. So there's actually a climate link to why there's more and more chupacabra reports over the last, say, 10, 15 years.
Isn't that what they determined with the chupacabra specimen that they found, that Texas rancher found, the Phyllis Canyon? Is that how you say? Yeah, Canyon. Okay. And they had that chupacabra, alleged chupacabra body DNA tested at the TSU, didn't they?
They did. Yeah, they did.
And from what I understand, it came back, it was like a coyote, or a coyote mixed with a Mexican wolf or something.
Yes, that's an interesting story. So Phyllis Canyon was, as you mentioned, she was a ranger out in Cuero, Texas. Actually, for the TV show Monster Quest, they flew me out there to meet Phyllis Canyon and look at her chupacabra. And it was interesting because the night before in the hotel, I was meeting with the TV show producers. I was like, I can explain this to you if you want me to explain sort of the context of the chupacabra here. I'm happy to do it. He's like, no, we already have the script. Just we call time at 7:30. We'll pick you up. We'll take you there. I'm like, okay, well, if you decide you want to actually understand this, let me know.
They're not interested in that.
No.
We got it covered already.
Yeah, we know the script. We already know what we want to say. Thanks, but no thanks. You wrote a book, whatever. So I'm like, whatever. I mean, I'm used to this. I've done enough TV. I'm like, whatever. Although I will give a shout out to Josh Gates. I was on his show, actually, Destination Truth, or Destination Unknown. I was on both of them, and he had me out there in Puerto Rico. It was actually a pretty good show. We ended up in a cave, knee deep in bat shit and
guano. Good times.
Yeah, that was
fun. That was fun.
But to his credit, even though it was a little more sensationalized than I would have liked, it was actually a pretty good show. So shout out to him. But so we for Phyllis Canyon, the one that you mentioned. So we go out there. For the camera crew, they want you to meet somebody like 5 times. They're like, knock on the door, pretend that we're not here. I'm like, okay. Hold on. Oh, hi. Never to see you there. No, do it again. So all right. So we meet with her, and she's like, do you want to see the chupacabra? I'm like, yeah, that's why we're here.
Obviously.
So she takes us in from the living room, out the back, into the garage. and she opens up a freezer. So she opens up the freezer and like she takes out ice cream and then like, some chicken wings. And then there's a severed dog head.
No.
Wrapped in plastic.
Don't.
Hell
Hell
yeah.
yes.
That's my kind of lady, dude. That's what I'm
So I'm
talking
like,
about.
okay, all right. Well, here's the severed coyote head. So she takes over. So of course the camera wants her to take it out 4 or 5 times. So we go there. So I actually got a chance to look at this thing and examine it. So she's telling the story, and I'm not in the shot, but I'm hearing her talk, and she's telling the camera guys and telling the producer, well, I saw this thing, and she talked about how she found this chupacabra, and she cut the head off, and it was so strange because she's like, it has no hair on it. It's the weirdest thing. She's like, it can't be mange because mangy animals have some hair on it, and she's like, it doesn't have any hair. So I'm hearing her say this. And I'm looking at the and I'm like, I see hair right here. It's literally I don't have any hair, but there's hair. I can, that thing that she's saying it doesn't have, it obviously has it.
You just pan right over here if you don't.
It's right here. It's right fucking here. Look. You don't even need to zoom in. You can get it from the just.
Hey man, we got to stick to the script,
Right,
Yeah.
we got a script, dude. So I'm like, whatever. So we wrapped up, and then later on, as I talk about in my book, so basically what happened was that it was Halloween. I forget what year, but it was Halloween, and as part of a Halloween special, a local TV station out of San Antonio, I think it was, decided they were going to do a DNA test on the chupacabra.
Ooh.
I know, right? I'm like, finally, some actual science. So they did the DNA test, and as was alluded to earlier, the answer came back coyote.
Big surprise.
Phyllis didn't like that answer. So she's like, well, she says, well, I'm a doctor. Can you guess what kind of doctor she is? She's a naturopath.
You fucking crazy, man. You sound insane. Do you realize that? You should be medicated.
Elaborate. What the fuck is that?
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, pump the brakes. Someone needs to explain that.
The point is that she was making it sound like her background had some bearing on genetic analysis, which of course did not at all.
No. It's a holistic doctor, pretty much, guys.
It's not.
Oh, is that what it is?
Mm-hmm. They kind of mix some science and natural therapy, and then they take some sort of like holistic approach to treating.
Like rubbing essential oils on your body and eating chickpeas kind of thing.
It's like step up from that. But
Shit, sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
So she's like, okay, well, I'm going to pay for my own DNA test because, the government is, she agreed to the DNA test. It comes back an answer she doesn't like. She's like, well, I'm going to submit it again on my own. I'm going to pay for it this time. They're like, it's your coyote, do whatever you want. So she's like, this is bullshit. So she sends it off to another lab. She pays for this, and it comes back the same. At this point, she's like, well, maybe it's a coyote, but it's also a chupacabra.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, that checks out.
She wanted it to be. So no matter what you said, it was going to be a chupacabra.
Well, so I asked her, I said, well, Phyllis, I mean, I'm trying not to sound condescending, but, I'm like, well, Phyllis,
what you did.
I'm like, okay, you admit that it's at least half coyote, but you say it's chupacabra. How does that work? She's like, well, I think the chupacabra is a coyote mixed with a wolf. I'm like, Phyllis, here's the thing. We already know what a coyote and a wolf mix is like. They're called coy wolves. They exist. They're not unknown to science. They don't suck blood. And they're nothing like this mangy dog yet. And then she's like, well, the animals, their eyes glow in photographs.
Of course. So do mine.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. So I'm like, Phyllis, again, Phyllis, here's the thing. Do you know why they only reflect in photographs? Here's why. Because they're flashes. because there's a flash reflection. This is not a thing. And like, that's why it's only in photographs, because it's the same with everybody else. It's called red eye. This has been known. Phyllis, you didn't discover anything new. This has been known for millennia. Well, again, I'm trying to be nice, but it's just sort of like, but she was nice. I bought a t-shirt from her. I bought a beer cozy, which I have.
Hold on. Like Chupacabra t-shirt and beer koozie?
Yes. Yeah. So she sold
Merchandising the shit out of that, huh?
Oh yeah, she so
that explains the second testing.
Yeah, because she literally called herself the Chupacabra lady. So she had a vested interest, literal financial.
Yes, she had financial gain.
Yeah. She's like, so, and I mean, I don't blame her for it, but I mean, it's like, so yeah, I mean, she signed things for me. I mean, she was nice. So I wasn't going to argue with her. I mean, I'm not there to like rain on a parade. I'm there to try and sort of like explain to her that we already know what a coyote wolf hybrid looks like.
Right.
That is a known thing. You can Google it. It's real, and it's nothing like what you found. And besides that, she kept saying there's no hair on this major Chupacabra, and I can fucking see the hair. I'm like, look, it's right there. It's literally in the photograph you gave me.
You're petting it.
Like, that's not a shadow. That's hair.
So Ben, before all the testing was done, right? When you were there and you watched her pull this head out, when you seen it, were you just in the back of your mind like, it's a fucking coyote? Like, did you know?
I suspected pretty early on, but what was interesting was that, again, she, in her mind, in Phyllis's mind, she had these sets of reasons why it couldn't be a coyote, despite DNA tests. She's like, well, but the mouth is different because, for example, the mouth looks bigger than a coyote. Well, what happens is that that's actually a function of the sarcoptic mange. So when animals have mange, the skin tightens, and that pulls back the flesh around the mouth. So again, all the things that she was like saying, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? I'm like, this can all be explained. I mean, I'm not trying to be Mr. Debunking Skeptic here, but you got to give me more than this because this is clearly coyote.
Yeah. Also, where's the rest of the body? Why'd you just cut the head off?
Well, she probably couldn't get their ice cream in there.
Phyllis said that she found, I think, two chupacabras. So one of them, as I recall, so in her house, there's lots of taxidermy. So I'm not a hunter. I mean, whatever. But you go in her house, she's, antelope and deer and bear and God knows it's such a. So at some point, I think there was a chupacabra coyote in her house.
You would
Did you see that one?
mount. Yeah, you would think if she caught a chupacabra, she would mount that bitch right, as soon as you walk in the door. Bow!
That's probably why she had the head in the freezer. That makes sense.
Well, actually, so there's a funny story, just as a quick aside. So there was in not in Cuero, Texas, but in Blanco, Texas, there was a guy named Jerry Eyre, and he actually taxidermied an alleged chupacabra. So I talked to him, and I was like, you're an expert, right? He's like, yeah. I was like, did you see anything unusual about this? I mean, I'll be honest, this looks a lot like a coyote. He's like, it looks like a coyote to me, but the guy that paid me to taxidermy it, he wanted it to be chupacabra. Hey, he's like, I'm not getting paid to identify it. I'm getting paid to stuff it.
I saw the pictures of that thing. It looked creepy as shit, though.
It did look creepy.
Yeah, but did he make it look that creepy?
I think I didn't ask him whether he made it creepy. It was kind of weird anyway. But so the guy that bought it was a creationist named John Adolphi. The reason he wanted the chupacabra was because he has a creationist museum, and he thought the chupacabra disproved evolution.
Oh, smart guy, huh?
So his logic is, well, those egghead scientists, those evolution scientists, they say the chupacabra can't exist, yet here it is. Obviously, if they were wrong about that, then they're wrong about evolution too.
Of course, that makes sense.
Why didn't I see it?
I don't know. We're slacking. That's the problem with us.
Yeah.
If there isn't any tangible evidence, should that preclude the possibility of its existence at all? Like, is there leeway for possibility? just because absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, according to
Sure.
William Wright.
Sure.
So,
No, I would agree with that. I mean, so the Chupacabra, it's there again. There's a couple of aspects to it that are distinctive. I've talked about a couple before. Again, it's a vampire.
it's a vampire dog, right?
Well, again,
sometimes
with
right.
no
So
butthole. That's the most important thing. Doesn't have the chocolate starfish.
not only do we not have scat, we don't have bones. We don't even have tracks. This is really telling, right?
Yeah.
Bigfoot is known for being blurry, but also leaving tracks.
Yeah.
So blurry.
So let's say there's 10,000 chupacabras out there. They have 4 legs. So every step, every 2 steps, they're creating exponential, like there should be literally hundreds of thousands of chupacabra tracks across North America, South America, what have you. There's not even one. And besides that, again, once you recognize that their alleged prey are not in fact drained of blood. I mean, again, in the rare cases where somebody has actually gone and said, you say this is a chupacabra victim, yes, cut it open, there's blood there, right? So we know for a fact that. So what are they drinking, right? So all these things sort of come together. But it's certainly true that in my research, and as Melanie, as you know, and I've done this for a long time, 20 years or so, and I look into a variety of things, curses, ghosts, and all sorts of things. And for example, every now and then there'll be someone who will say, "Well, you're just a debunking skeptic. You say Bigfoot don't exist." I said, "No," or ghost. I said, "I have never ever said that Bigfoot can't exist. I have never ever claimed that ghost cannot exist."
Right.
I've searched all you want, interviews, books, articles. I've never said that. Why haven't I said that? For the reason that you're bringing up. It's like, I can't say that scientifically. I don't know. We can't say you can't prove a universal negative. That being said, what I can say is that all the evidence that I've seen points to these not existing. Right. Tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, there could be better evidence. But as of now, I've looked at this, and in some cases, I've done field research. I mean, I've
done it.
I've spent time in the jungles of Nicaragua. I've been in. I've traveled around. South America. I spent 5 years on this. I'm not just some armchair debunker saying this is bullshit. I was out there.
You did the research, and you had boots on ground.
And look, and my position is always, if I'm wrong, then show me.
And on that note, this seems like the perfect spot to take a break in our interview with Ben Radford, the world's foremost expert on the Chupacabra. He literally wrote the book. Next week, we'll finish our interview with Ben, as well as share our final thoughts on this legendary beast. So until then, spoke at you later.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.